Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Dan Cordelicchio. I want to welcome you to another segment of Destination Health Podcast, where we find function in a dysfunctional world. We are powered by the Suburban Wellness Group. I am very excited today. I have my chiropractic brother in arms on today. We're going to talk about a great many topics. Looking forward to the conversation. Dr. Buddy Touchinsky. Dr. Buddy, how are you today?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me. Honored to join you. And we've had a great conversation before this, and I can't wait to see what we talk about coming up.
Well, you know what? Every time we talk, Dr. Buddy, we're always moving and weaving, a little bit about chiropractic, a little bit about nutrition, and so forth and so on. But Dr. Buddy's a chiropractor. He's also a certified functional medicine practitioner. He's been married, and he has a 7-year-old daughter, Megan. His wife's name is Susie. Loves spending time outdoor in nature, either hiking up on a mountain or working out in the garden. My wife does the garden. I have a purple thumb. She's got the green thumb. Specializes in gut-related issues and helps business owners and entrepreneurs lose weight, very important, while gaining energy and confidence so they can focus on their business mission. He loves teaching other practitioners how to implement marketing programs and help them out in their practice. Buddy, thank you very much for being on today. How are you today? Is it at least a little bit warmer in PA as it is in New Jersey? We're like 35 degrees, and tomorrow's going into the 50s. Then after that, it's going to 70. So I'm looking forward to the next week.
Oh yeah, it hasn't been a bad winter here. We've gotten some big snowstorms, but looking out the window right now, real sunny. So might have to go for a nice walk outside later on.
Excellent. So let's start from the beginning. Chiropractic. How'd you get involved in chiropractic?
Oh man, so my uncle's a chiropractor, so that's probably the strongest link to the profession. But he was in Georgia, I was in PA, so I didn't really see him all that often, other than like family reunions, Christmas, and stuff like that. But I found myself drawn kind of into the chiropractic world in high school when I dove for a ground ball. It was kind of like this time of year in high school. I was a junior, I believe, and dove backhand, strained my left lower back. Heck, I was young. I'm a teenager. I'd never hurt my back before. So I kind of just worked through it for like 2 weeks, and then to the point where I could barely move. So even though my uncle was a chiropractor, Mom took me to the family doc, put me on muscle relaxers, pain relievers. And I kind of did that on and off for a month, missing half the season. Went to PT 3 times a week for, had to be a month or two. And then finally, I don't know what made her finally decide to take me to the local chiropractor. Went there, and within 2 visits, I was feeling pretty good. And so that kind of got me thinking, all right, this stuff's pretty cool. I like the idea of not having to rely on referrals, because PT was in the back of my mind up to that point, because my mom's a PTA.
Right.
But after that, I'm like, okay, I think I need to look at this more.
It's important because a lot of chiropractors get involved because of a sports injury or some type of injury, whether it's a car accident, whether they hurt their back playing baseball or football. With me, it was football going across the middle, and the linebacker, he did the 40-yard dash in probably 2.1 seconds, and he slammed me to the ground. I was in pain, and eventually I made myself to a chiropractor. My mom took me. There was one down the street, and next thing you know, I'm feeling pretty good when it comes to this. So you've been in chiropractic, but then you kind of changed and you went into weight loss, you got into nutrition. What was that aha moment that you had in order to move that way?
Yeah, so probably a couple things. So I came back to the area where I grew up. I'm kind of up here in the sticks in PA. I'm in the southern part of the Poconos. And it's a more rural area and a medically underserved area. So as I got into practice, I went gung-ho, sports injuries, work-related injuries, auto injuries, stuff like that. Neck and back pain was going to be my focus. But when I got into practice, I realized that most of the people that came in, they had back pain, but it was because they were out of shape. It was because they had poor overall vitality. Their nutrition was horrible. They were obese. They had diabetes. They had heartburn. They had IBS. And I started asking more questions about how it was being treated. And as you know, in our background, we get a lot of the kind of root cause stuff. Mm-hmm. We get the health, focusing on building health and not just treating disease. So I started thinking more about what I could do to help my community. And if that wasn't enough to kind of take me into the world of integrative medicine and functional medicine, it was a little bit more personal in that. So long story short, you pick up a lot of bad habits when you go through college.
Oh
Booze,
yes. So
fast food,
how much beer
high
and
stress.
pizza and where we were, we call them Italian hot dogs, did you eat during that time?
So our favorite meal was as we're staying up late night playing Madden on PlayStation. We'd get hungry around 1 a.m. before we'd go to bed, and we would cook up some mac and cheese. And at the end, you slice a hot dog up, throw it in there, and kind of warm up the hot dog at the same time, and that was pretty good. And if you really wanted to go out and treat ourselves, we'd go out there. Taco Bell right down the street. There was a Hardee's right down the street, McDonald's right down the street, and so yeah, I just horrible diet, and that transferred into grad school as well, and add stress on top of that, and then add the stress. I started my practice from scratch. I continued some of those bad habits. The beer I drank might have been a little more expensive. It wasn't the $15 a case stuff. It might have been the $25 case stuff. But those habits continued, and I ended up 40 pounds more than I am today.
I can understand exactly what you're going through. When I had graduated, I did my associateship. It lasted 6 months before I got out because I said I can do this on my own. I was the one who got there early in the morning. I stayed late. I learned how to bill. I learned how to do progress notes, exams, and so forth and so on. And Taco Bell was my favorite, by the way. And I went from $1.95 to almost 260. And Dr. Buddy, that's when I had my heart attack.
Wow.
And yeah, when I was 37 years old, I had a heart attack, and it was a situation where my triglycerides were 1,227. I laugh at that now, but that's what happens, right? When you're in these types of situations. So then you started to look at your patients, right? And you're saying, how can I help them? I got to help myself first, right? If you don't take care of yourself first.
Absolutely. And I had created some programs to help them, and they never really took off. And part of that is because I wasn't walking the walk. I was just talking the talk. And I kind of hit a point where it's funny because it was when social media first came on scene. This is probably going back to like 2008. I think I started my Facebook account, and I was at a wedding and I saw some profile pictures, and I'm like, who the hell? I'm like, holy crap, that's me. And if I can see, like, I'm getting the chin, I'm getting the puffy cheeks, I got the belly, and I'm like, I got to do something. And I had the epiphany. It's like, in order to help others, I gotta help myself first, and then I got to bring people with me. So I went on a plan. Actually, I didn't go on a plan. I tried every plan out there.
What did you try? What did you
man.
try that didn't work?
So a lot of them did work, but they weren't sustainable. So I went on the Eat to Live kick, and I think Dr. Joe Furman or Joel Furman I think he's in your neck of the woods. But Eat to Live, it's mostly vegan, or it's all vegan. So I went with the all veggie kick, and that worked. I lost some weight, but I'm a meat eater. So I need my steak and my broccoli. So going all veggies was I was hungry all the time. I didn't really have good energy. I wasn't really focusing well. So that didn't work for me. And then I tried an Atkins type diet, and actually didn't do too badly on that, and something that's pretty close to what I teach now, maybe not the high fat part of it. I tried Whole30, which wasn't bad. I elements of that incorporated into our current program. I tried, a bunch of things. I read every book out there to see what dietary concepts and theories kind of jived with what I learned, and then eventually found one kind of a conglomerate of a lot of those that worked really well for me. I still remember it. 21 pounds in 21 days I lost. And on top of that, my energy was through the roof. I could focus much better. I was sleeping much better. I had less joint muscle pain. So that's kind of what I teach right now.
Yeah, that's extremely important, because in my own practice, it's not that I'm doing a keto diet, or it's not that I'm just doing a Mediterranean diet. It's all modified, because tell me, do you have patients coming in? Oh, if I don't eat keto, that's it. I can't stay here. I can't be here. I'm on a plant-based diet, and I can't do that. I teach at a university at the graduate level, nutrition, and it's like, I say to students, I understand that you're plant-based, but what happens if a carnivore comes into your office, right? I mean, what do you do then? Do you sit there and say no, or are you going to try to help them, right? So a lot of people they get stuck on one particular type of diet, right?
Yeah,
And
it's good.
And it's a situation where, you got to find out what works for your metabolism and for your biochemistry, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And we're in the day of like tribalism and the gurus. So whether it's politics or whether it's, like you said, it's carnivore or plant-based, we kind of latch on to these ideas and then we associate with these tribes. And in anything that contradicts that, it's like, well, it's almost like an attack on your belief system and you personally. So yeah, it's hard because you gotta meet people where they're at first, and you gotta try to figure out what's working for them, what's not working for them, and then slowly kind of introduce some of these different concepts that might be completely different with what they really bought into
Right.
over recent time.
And it's important because it becomes, and you use the word sustainable, and I wrote it down and I circled it, because what happens is that for our listeners, you want to go through a program, you want to go through a diet. I don't even know if I like the word diet. I like positive lifestyle change. I want to make a lifestyle change, right? In order to make that lifestyle change, it must be sustainable for you. Because if it's not sustainable, you're just not going to follow it. And there's some patients that come in and they're ready to rock and roll, and you can make a lot of positive, you can make a number of them. And then there's some that you got to take a little bit slower, right? Because you have to take it piecemeal. So everybody's different when it comes to that also.
Yeah, yeah, and to be honest, I've experimented with all different types of programs,
Mhm.
kind of the 80-20, the gradual kind of phase in some different things.
Mhm.
But what I found most success with as of late has been this concept of this really intense kind of sprint. So 6-week program, completely change their diet, implement some healthy behaviors, and when we do that, people see big changes. Now we gotta qualify the person. We gotta make sure they're ready for that. If they're not ready for that, we don't put them in that type of program.
Right.
But if they are, we put them through that program. They see a pretty big weight loss early on, and they see major changes in how they feel. Well, then that motivates them to say, well, this is how bad I've been feeling over the years. It's kind of like the boiled
Mhm.
frog scenario where they slowly get worse over time, like I did. Next thing you know, I'm 40 pounds more than I was when I graduated grad school, and you realize like, holy crap, I do feel bad. But you don't realize that until all of a sudden you're taken out of the pot, you're not in the boiling water anymore, and you're like, oh my
Right.
god, this is how I should be feeling, and this is how bad I was even a couple of weeks ago. Well, that's really motivating to help people carry it forward and then want to implement it long term.
Right. So let me ask you a question about COVID and nutrition. I've noticed I had a lot of patients coming in, they've gained a lot of weight. And, we're going to discuss gut health in a few, but, when I'm doing some stool analysis or, gut, like a wheat tumor test, boy, it's
Sure.
just off the charts. Are you finding out a lot of people have been patients coming in and they've gained a ton of weight over the last year?
Absolutely. I was almost victim to that myself. So back in a year ago, we were shut down and we had to stay at home orders, and you start to and you're a business owner, you're an entrepreneur. One of our kind of key elements is being able to future pace and predict what we're going to do the next week, the next month, the next
Mhm.
year. And with things so up in the air, it's like you can't plan. So you don't know what to do. So you lose focus. You're not going in the office. So you start to maybe eat a little worse. You stay up a little bit
Mhm.
later. You have that extra glass of wine. And I'm sure that happened to other people as well. And now we're working from home for most part of the year, depending what industry you're in. And now you can walk right down the hall to the kitchen and snack all day long. So I know that's a problem for a lot of people. But yeah, I've talked to a lot of people this past year that have gained 20, 30, 40 pounds.
Yeah, it's really a problem because a couple of weeks ago in the office we were sitting around and we were talking and we were saying, "Wow, the pandemic that's going to come after this is going to be obesity, which is going to lead to cardiovascular disease, autoimmune, type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, all sorts of things, hypertension, because that hypertension with type 2 diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular disease, hypertension, a pulmonary issue, you're very susceptible, these days to viruses. Your immune system is decreased. What have you recommended to your patients during this time to help boost their immune response?
Main recommendation is getting the diet on point and improving their metabolic health. So
Mm.
I'm going to say something that might be a little controversial, but I think, in my opinion, that if our obesity rates were way lower, let's say they're like 10, 15% instead of what are these days, like 60% overweight.
60%, yeah, 50, 60%.
If it was more like 15%, I don't think our hospitals would have noticed a strain at all. And what we're seeing is, I forget the exact number, but over 70% of the people that ended up being admitted to the hospitals are obese, they're overweight. Yeah. So we take that out of the equation, and now it's kind of a small blip on the screen versus the extreme stress that our healthcare workers saw in the hospitals during the peak of the pandemic. And we see this, we see evidence of this in countries that have similar poor health statistics, whether it's the UK, Mexico, I believe Italy isn't doing so great these days. And those are all the countries where COVID hit the hardest and where we saw the most stress on the healthcare systems.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting comment. And it's a comment that a lot of docs are making right now, because we're looking at it, after the fact. And that's what in part, we need to do that in order to figure out what needs to be done to make it better, right? I mean, that's very important. And the allopaths and the osteopaths are all coming up with the same concept. And what's going to come out of this is that what we're doing is very important, and we need to motivate, educate, inspire individuals to better health. And it's not like the way it was when we first got out of chiropractic school. This is more real right now because of the COVID situation. It's more real to me. Not that it wasn't real back then, but we're in this, and there's so many lives that have been adversely affected. I can't, I think that we were, another conversation, we were in the office, we lost another friend two and a half weeks ago. And I think we're in the 20s right now with the number of individuals that we grew up with that are no longer, Dr. Buddy, here on this earth because of this. And the one or two that was the similarities was obesity and type 2 diabetes. That really was the two aspects of this. So, it's kind of, it's not kind of, it is our mission to make sure that this doesn't happen again the way that it's happened, right?
Yeah, and part of me is a little upset that our public health officials have dropped the ball in a way. I mean, yeah, mask up, yeah, stay home, all that stuff. You can say with what you want about that stuff. Likely a good idea, and let's talk about that too. But why not at the same time say also get your stuff together, get on a health improvement plan. Don't go the opposite way like our governments did and say, okay, we're going to keep the liquor stores open, we're going to keep the beer stores open, and all that's fine. But they should have really stressed. I mean, if not then, when? I mean, wake people up. People are kind of shaken out of their slumber to wake them up and say, hey, we can't keep going like this, because not only do we burden the entire healthcare system with complications from diabetes and heart disease and hypertension and stroke and all that stuff that results from a poor lifestyle, but now we got this pandemic where it really exposes that weakness. So let's try to fix that, so that, not only do you help with those problems, but not only do we help the current virus problem, but whatever nature throws at us in the future, because we can take the vaccine now. And that could be, let's say it's 100% effective, no questions asked, and it's perfectly safe. That's great. Let's use that. But what about the next one? And what about the next one? And people kind of criticize me for that when I post something like that on social media. They'll say, well, yeah, we can do that for next time, but we got to deal with the current crisis at hand. And my response to them is, hey, last Memorial Day, we launched a group project, a group program, and we've had two people lose 100 pounds since then. So we could have started stressing this from the beginning. Yeah, in the couple months of the start of the pandemic, all right, yeah, we got to focus on mitigating what's going on. But then it immediately sort of shifted towards modifying factors that we could. And we knew it back then. We knew out of Italy. We knew out of New York City during the first waves that people that were showing up and dying in the hospitals had comorbidities, were obese, and had metabolic issues. And why we haven't really stressed doing anything about that, I don't know.
Well, I don't know if it's controversial, because I've been talking to allopaths and osteopaths, and they feel the same way. They have the same thoughts. I did a couple of podcasts this week and with allopaths, and they're all like, you know what? I want you to drink water, you know, and then another one was like, we have to eat appropriately. And another one is like, let's take some vitamins and minerals that you're deficient in to see if we can help out, because that is where it's going. I mean, even in December of last year, there was a study that was done with one of these individuals, Dr. Dana Cohen, who gave me the study. She sent it to me. She said, Dan, you know, take a look at this, because vitamin D has a worse outcome. Low levels of vitamin D have a worse outcome than, you know, than having regular levels when it comes to this novel coronavirus. And I agree with you. I mean, you know, people get upset at me too, but, you know, as doctors, this is what we do. We have to figure out what it is we need to do to make it better. That's our job. You know, we're not arguing, right, with anybody. We're just saying, what do we need to do? If it was any other pandemic, it would be the same way, right? That's the way I look at it.
Yeah,
That's
and in hospitals, they have this M&M conferences where if someone dies, they kind of take the case management of that patient and they take apart every little piece of it to see what they could have done better or differently. So I think we need to do the same case.
Right, and that's all. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, because at the beginning of the pandemic, it was like, buy toilet paper, but there's no GI distress going on here, and everybody's buying in the center. Everybody's buying the ultra processed foods, which was bizarre to me, right?
Yeah, stock up on those staples, which are all, like I said, processed foods.
You know, now you're eating all of those, and my listeners have heard me say this: omega-6 fatty acids, inflammation, and so forth and so on. They're not buying their veggies. They're not buying grass-fed beef. They're not getting wild salmon or wild fatty fish that they need, right?
Right.
I mean, those things have so many benefits when it comes to this. So let's talk about gut health, because I know you're into gut health.
Yes.
Start off. What do you want to say? And then we go from there.
How many hours do we have? No.
That's okay. I'm looking at our clock. That's okay. We got about 25 minutes, you know, but that's okay. Take your time, because if we don't finish, Dr. Buddy, we're having you on in another 6 weeks so we can finish up our conversation here.
Absolutely. And before we get into gut health, though, I just want to say that a lot of people aren't aware of this stuff yet. Like, it's amazing, because we talk about this, and you talk about this kind of stuff all the time. We kind of assume it's common knowledge. Mm-hmm. So I don't blame people for not getting it yet. And I think that's our job here, doing stuff like we're doing today. But gut health is another one of those kind of areas where people just don't know how impactful it can be. And I think when we mention stuff like that, whether it's diet as it relates to the pandemic, or whether it's gut health, we mention these things and they kind of seem like such like simple and basic concept. It's like, all right, that's good, but how much impact does that really have, and how much should I pay attention to it? People kind of brush it off. And sometimes it's the allopathic community that brushes that off because they don't work with people in the capacity that we do and make little changes in diet and just remove gluten from the diet and see people reduce things like headaches and migraines and tremors and fatigue and brain fog. But yeah, gut health is one of those areas where it can have a humongous impact for people suffering from all sorts of issues.
Talk about leaky gut.
Leaky gut, yeah, one of those things where, and a lot of people come in and they say, oh, I have leaky gut, or I have dysbiosis, or I have SIBO, or small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And usually it ends up being a combination of all the above. But leaky gut, the analogy I like to use best, it's like I'm looking out my window right now, and if I wanted to get some cool, fresh air in here, I'd open up the window, and I wouldn't let bugs in because I got the screen there. But the air is small enough, the oxygen's small enough to get through the screen, and I can breathe that nice fresh air in. So the same thing happens when we consume food. We want the nutrients, we want the protein, we want all the good stuff, but we don't want a lot of the larger kind of particles in food and other stuff that shouldn't get into our bloodstream. Now, when we get leaky gut, that'd be like if I took a screwdriver and stuck it through my screen a few times and created a big gaping hole. So now I'm going to get bugs in. So same thing happens to the gut. Now you start getting all sorts of stuff, bigger fragments of proteins, and all that stuff, once it gets into your system, then the body recognizes that. It says, hey, this stuff isn't supposed to be here. So let's mount an immune response. So then this goes into autoimmunity where, all right, trigger the immune response all the time. Right. Well, now you're going to start to get some friendly fire, and you're start to get some damage where you're not supposed to get damage.
Yeah, and that damage can lead to autoimmune conditions, can lead to type 2 diabetes,
Almost anything.
obesity, cardiovascular disease, and so forth and so on. And that becomes a problem. I'm dealing with, leaky gut, intestinal permeability, whatever it is you want to call it on a daily basis. And, taking a probiotic can be very beneficial. Let's get into probiotics when it comes to leaky gut. What's the connection there?
Sure. So we want to have another analogy I like to use. It's the analogy of a nice lush green lawn. And as long as you keep that lawn good, as long as you fertilize it, you aerate it and overseed it in the fall, you keep it watered, the grass will stay nice, lush, and thick. So that's what a healthy gut should be like. And the grass represents those probiotics.
Mhm.
Now, if you let the lawn go too much, like I'm thinking of my lawn out here when I first moved into the house, it was an old retired couple who didn't take care of the lawn at all. You have these large patches of weeds, and you have these large patches of kind of like bare spots. And in those bare spots, you're more likely to get weeds to grow, not nice, lush green grass. So when it comes to probiotics, the idea is to kind of overseed the gut, keep it nice and lush so that other stuff can't move in.
Yeah, it's very important. It's very important. There's protocols that we use in the office to help out to make sure that that gut is healed, as we say, because then you can absorb the nutrients. I like the analogy of the nice fresh air coming in and so forth. So I don't know. Do you have a trademark on those, or can I use them?
Not yet. I'll look it up now.
All right, so let's talk about weight loss because you're. I mean, both of us are big into weight loss, and sometimes weight loss isn't complicated, but people do make it very complicated. People make it complicated, and I have a ton of people come in. They have protein shakes from this one. They're taking vitamins and minerals from this one. I'm taking bee pollen because it increases my. You're smiling because you know where I'm going, right? I'm taking bee pollen because it increases my metabolism. Boy, that drives me crazy because, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of patients that are coming in, the more shakes they take in the day, and that could be good taking a nutrition shake, depending upon what you're coming in with and what we can do to help out. But it's like how many vitamins and supplements can I possibly take? It's like I always say this, it's a red badge of courage, right? Right there on your heart, where the more you take, the better off you are. A neighbor of mine has a $600 a month habit going to a popular vitamin store. And I'm like, huh? Her husband is like, can you help her? No, I won't get involved.
Yeah, yeah. I've had patients where they bring in a bag of supplements and I ask them, well, which ones are you taking right now? And they say all of them. And one gentleman in particular, he said, I don't eat anything but dinner, because usually when I take my supplements in the morning and at lunch, like I don't really feel that hungry. But yeah, if people overdo it, and a lot of it's marketing, a lot of it is hype, some of it's good, some of it's really good, but some of it depends on the person, depends on what their body needs, depends on
Right.
what's good for them. But yeah, people end up getting talked into a lot of different stuff, and then it's pills. It could be medication. There's prescription medications for weight loss. There's supplements for weight loss. There's different gadgets that you can use. There's different weight loss machine, and a lot of these things are good as well. So they have some benefits, but they're sold these different types of infrared saunas and vibe plates and all this other stuff is supposed to take care of all their problems. But the problem is the person ends up using that as the sole solution
Mhm.
when that doesn't really work that way.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't work that way. And for our listeners today, be careful out there when it comes, because the weight loss industry's, how many billions of dollars, and you really, you need to come see Dr. Buddy and I. And I'm not saying that as a marketing, but we have a lot of clinical experience. I mean, just because Ma Wong was a product that was like 28 years ago, 30 years ago, right? If you remember Ma Wong, I don't think it's even legal anymore in a lot of countries because it's a stimulant that can actually cause some damage, liver, hypertension, and so forth, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at that point, you might as well just go on heroin or something like that. probably just as good or bad for you. But so here's a secret that a lot of people might not know. A principle of marketing is make your solution seem like the only solution, that everything else is bunk. So
Right.
when someone's marketing a product, and someone might go in with the right intentions of a product, but then they hand it over to the marketing team and they have to make it sound like everything else is horrible. So this, or doesn't work, or is ineffective, or is a waste of money. So what this creates is just a ton of confusion. So people will see an ad, it'll look like a study, it'll look like something maybe official, but it'll actually be just pure advertisement. And they'll read that ad and it'll show that supplement A is the only solution to their weight loss problem and everything else is horrible. And someone will come to me, and I'm sure you get patients come to you on a regular basis, like, hey, have you heard about, insert name of herb or formula or whatever in there. And I'll say, what do you think about this? Because I heard that this is not good to do. Like following a whole foods diet isn't good, or doing this alone isn't good. And it's a lot of it's just marketing. So people get confused, in addition to the confusion that the media makes when they read one single study, poor or good study, and they say, oh, eggs are good for us, then eggs are bad for us. So a lot of people end up just hearing all this noise, getting completely confused, and say, screw it, why even bother? Because it's not going to help anyone.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I know you and I were going to touch upon this at one point in time during this conversation, because the marketing is really all over the place. And, there's so many world-renowned experts that are out there. I get patients coming in from different offices, individuals, and they're like, well, I was told to do this and I was told to do that. And I'm like, okay, who is the individual who said this to you? Right. And, I'm sitting there, I'm saying, I don't know who they are. And I've been practicing for 30 years, over 30 years. And who are they, and what are they trying to sell? It's kind of like, 6-pack abs in what was it, 10 minutes or 8 minutes or something like that.
Yeah.
And in 8-minute abs or something like that, it doesn't really work out that way. And as a side, I had this person come into the office. I won't mention the product, but they were showing me pictures of somebody that was clearly out of shape physically. 2 weeks later, they were eternally impressive. And they were taking this homeopathic thingy. And I was like, no. I was like, no. I'm like, no, that just doesn't happen. So be careful, for all the listeners out there. You talk about evolutionary mismatch. What is that?
Yeah, I like to use that term because I think that's probably the primary reason for most of our chronic illnesses that we suffer with, whether it's obesity or diabetes, hypertension, stuff like heart disease. And what I mean by evolutionary mismatch is that we developed over a period of thousands and thousands of years. And basically our genes, our genetics were carved from our environment, just like a glacier running over land or a river going through a mountain pass carves that mountain pass. So it all goes back to kind of the Darwinism, the survival of the fittest. So if your genetics went in a certain direction that caused you to, let's say, for instance, that let's say sun harmed you. And back in the day, we were in houses under artificial light. So if you were outside, sun harmed you very easily. Well, you didn't thrive, you didn't survive, you didn't pass on to your genetics. So that genetic type kind of goes by the wayside eventually, because more and more of those people would suffer and not do well. Versus, let's say someone thrived in that situation because that's what our environment was. And so that the genetics are passed on. So we take thousands and thousands of years being shaped by our environment, maybe tens, maybe even hundreds of thousands of years shaped by our environment. And now you completely change that environment in the past, 50 years or so. You put us in artificial light. You give us this artificial processed food, and take away all the things that really that nature had provided to us. And now we expect our bodies, this machine, to work well. And it just doesn't work that way. So that's why we want to go back to our roots in a way and make sure we get some of those basics that our bodies have learned to survive on and thrive on.
Yeah, I think that's very important to mention. And with all of that, people have challenges still, though, right? Sticking to their plan. First one that everybody says to me, and I'm sure you get this too, is I can't afford it, right? right? I mean, I just can't afford it. I sit there and say to them, but yet you're here. You can't afford it, but yet you're here. And, you know, you're 50 pounds overweight. That takes a lot of money to get 50 pounds overweight, right? It's not something that you have, you know, oh, I had a whole pizza, little pepperoni on it, maybe some onions or whatever the case may be, you know, and you're going to gain 50 pounds doing that once, right? It took effort to get there. How do you deal with a patient like that?
Yeah, so that's just one of many, I'll call them not reasons, but excuses. And I posted this on social media the other day. I said, what's the most common? So I've been dealing with weight loss in the past 10 years or so. And between me and my health coach, we've worked with over 1,000 people. And I asked, what's the most common reason people feel at weight loss or fail at weight loss? And I had a bunch of answers. And unless they've been following me for a long time and knew the answer, we got all those other excuses: time for food prep, can't afford it, confused about what to eat. And at the end of the day, what, in my opinion, the most common reason is mindset. And if you're coming in and you need to lose weight and you're saying you can't afford it, there's very few people that actually show up in that scenario and actually can't afford it. I mean, unless you're barely surviving, living on ramen noodles, and you're 3 months behind in your rent, usually the person can afford it. So that's not the issue. The issue is misplaced priorities, or they don't have time. My answer to that: I don't have time to food prep. What if you were told today you have cancer and there was a 100% chance that you can cure that cancer by following a very specific diet? Do you think you'd find the time to prep the foods?
Oh, no, there's no doubt.
Diet? No doubt.
No doubt.
So this is how we got to look at our current situation. So if you're obese, if you have diabetes, pre-diabetes, if you have family history of heart disease and you're headed in that direction yourself, approach it the same way. You can't afford not to take the time. You can't afford not to focus on that. You can't afford not to pay for help in order to remedy that situation. So
Right.
Yeah, lots of excuses, but mindset's got to get your head right. You got to have the right motivation. And I'll end the mindset part with this: is I was never a morning person. I looked for solutions. I went online, I Googled, I'm like, how can I become more of a morning person? And then one day I realized, because I had a certain goal in mind and I wanted to build this certain program and this practice. And pretty soon I was getting up at 5:30 in the morning every day because I had a reason to. I had a reason to get out of bed. So if you're struggling to lose weight, you got to dig deep and say, why do I need to do this? What do I want? What will it be like when I ultimately lose the 30 or 40 pounds? You need to find that reason that makes you stick to it. And that reason has to be more compelling and more powerful than that temporary craving.
100%.
Big secret of weight loss.
And for our listeners today, that's going to be the truest thing that you're going to hear today. You have to have a compelling reason why to continue on. And we all have one. I'm going to share mine. I have a 13-year-old son. I'm 59 years old. Dr. Buddy, I want to be around. I want to see where his hockey goes. If it goes nowhere, that's okay. But we have father-son time and so forth and so on. I still want to see my family, right? There's nieces and nephews. My niece just had a baby. She's very cute, by the way. And so I want to be around for this, especially after having a cardiac event. So it's not that I get upset, but correct me if I'm wrong. Once they start going like this, oh, I don't have time to prep. I don't have time to do this. I don't have any money. And you're sitting there and you go like this. You go like this. And you did it. You put your head down and you're probably rolling your eyes, right? And you're saying, but yet you're still eating. We're just going to displace that money from what you're buying to something different, right?
So two things with that. When someone says that to me, I think two things immediately. Sometimes I'll say it to them. Sometimes I'll just think it. But the first one is you're in denial. You're in denial. You're lying to yourself. You are in pain. You're suffering because of it, but you're just in denial. The second thing is, oh man, this person hasn't suffered enough yet. And I see this with younger kids. So I got this one teenager.
Unfortunately, right? They haven't suffered enough.
And teenagers are tough because they haven't suffered enough. So 300 pounds, 18 years old, and talking to the parents. The teenagers don't want it. They don't want to be there. And I usually don't even take on these cases unless the teenager is ready to do it. But the parents want it, and the parents want it more than they do. I want it more than they do. That can't be the issue.
Can't be the issue.
But I know I'm like, and I leave with this. Like I tell it almost in every case, I tell the parent, I'm like, unfortunately, they haven't suffered yet. They need to suffer for the next 10, 15, 20 years. And then they'll look back and realize I just wasted like decades of my life suffering, and I didn't have to. And your most common patient type, if you're like me, is it's the late 40s into the late 50s, usually females, because they usually take care of everyone else but themselves first.
Right.
They finally get in, and the kids are out of the nest, and then they start to look at their own health, where they're starting to suffer more and more, and then you take care of them. And it's awesome, because the stuff we do, it's like 4 to 6 weeks later, you can see a huge turnaround in how they feel. And they look back and like, oh my God, all I had to do was commit like 4 to 6 weeks to making the changes that you taught me, and I could have prevented the last 20 years of suffering. So it's heartbreaking in a way. I mean, I'm happy to do it, and it's so rewarding, but then it gets so frustrating when and I'm only in my 40s, so I have lots of friends that I know are suffering, and you reach out to them, and they use all those excuses, and it's like
they always do, right?
They haven't suffered enough yet, or they are in complete denial, and I just feel for them. I thank the Lord that I figured it out, and when I was only in my early 30s, and kind of go full circle back to that was I didn't realize how poor my performance was in my business and doing all that I needed to do, because my diet was horrible and because my health was horrible. But I had enough suffering, and thankfully I saw the light back then, and it's our mission, or it's my mission anyway, I'm sure yours as well, to just shine a light on this and teach as many people as possible, like, hey, you have an option and it can be better.
100%. And what you just said is exactly what I say to individuals that are potential patients, and they're kind of figuring that out. I'm thinking of somebody at the end of last year. They had called me up. We were busy doing telehealth. Took them a month to get into to see me. A child, overweight, 250 pounds or so, from what I remember, and it was the money issue. It was the money issue. And the parents were saying it was the money issue. So, listen, I don't get involved in that, but, I ask a couple of questions. Again, what are you feeding your child? They're being made fun of. So now you're going to have psychological, mental, emotional issues at one point in time, right? And I never saw the daughter just talking to the mom and dad, and they just walked away. They walked away, and they were like, no, we just can't afford this. But yet you're still spending a ton of money feeding your child. And now there are all of these issues. And this leads me into another aspect that I'm going to throw into this. And I usually don't, but I'm going to do it today because I see this more and more. Okay. The priorities, as we said, are misplaced, right? That's up there. The mindset is bad. And then what they do when they make these excuses, the priorities are not there, mindset's not there. Tell me, they go to the wrong person for this. They try to cut corners, right? Do you find that to be true in your practice?
Yeah, especially someone that's in a bit of denial, and someone that is looking for the easy way out. I mean, trust me, it's easy to find the easy way out, or what looks to be the easy way out.
Right.
You see it in the marketing. You start searching websites for like paleo and Atkins and stuff like that. Well, guess what? Those websites have something called pixels. And when you go on Facebook, people target the people that have been to those websites. So that's why you start seeing all of those ads for what stuff that you were just looking at. So you'll see stuff for quick weight loss supplements and gadgets and stuff like that. And then if you're the type of person where it's like you want to take the easy way out, or where it's you don't want to make the tough changes, then you're going to fall for those. You're going to spend money on those. And so you mentioned earlier about the person that went for the homeopathic thing in 2 weeks. They were much better, and you call it a thingy. So the thingies are okay, but they can't be the main solution. Thingies can be part of the solution. So there can be tools that you use along the way in order to get there, but they can't be the main emphasis of any program. The main emphasis of any program has to be the basics. And it goes back to the evolutionary mismatch conversation, where You got to have the right diet. You got to sleep right. You got to manage your stress. You got to get out in nature and in sunlight. You got to have physical activity. So if that's not the cornerstone, if that's not the main part of the program, then you need to look for another program.
Yeah, you need to run. You need to run. Because I know within a stone's throw, so many places they're opening up weight loss wellness centers and so forth. I'm not even bitter over it because actually they come to me after a period of time, right? I mean, that's always what happens. I work out 10 minutes a week and I'm going to be a Greek god. Probably not exactly accurate. And then I'm going to see my personal trainer and I'm in the gym 4 to 5 hours a day. Well, that's a little bit overboard in addition to, right? So there's these extremes that people go to. I'll get you in and out in 15 minutes and you're going to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger or something like that, but they don't know what they don't know. And unfortunately, if they don't know what they don't know, you're not going to know what you don't know. And the continuum goes on. Sleep is important too. Always asking about their restful, restorative sleep, right?
Absolutely. All those other all those other strategies that I mentioned, the healthy habits, as we call them, super important. And without those, I mean, here's another common scenario where you have someone who's super busy, that's stressed out, and they're grabbing food on the go. So that's part of their problem. And then they start to eat better, or they want to just follow a specific diet, whether it's Whole30, Atkins, Paleo, whatever the case may be. They say, I'm not losing weight yet. What's going on? And they start asking about the rest of their lifestyle, and they're not sleeping well. They're stressed out all day long. And not a lot of people know this, but stress, so I'm wearing something called the continuous glucose monitor. And I've done this various times throughout the past couple of years. And what it has taught me the most was, I usually skip breakfast. I usually do intermittent fasting in the morning. I'll eat lunch. And what I've noticed is that when I get up, get dressed, get a shower, my blood sugar is pretty much baseline, let's say around 80, 85. And then I get in the car to drive to work. And whether it's the Foo Fighters that I put on listening on the way there, or pulling out in the traffic and then 80-mile-an-hour traffic out on the 4-lane highway here, or just showing up to work and getting bombarded with questions from my staff, starting to see patients. But what I noticed was, without eating a thing, without drinking a thing, my blood sugar goes from 80 to 85 to sometimes 130 and 140. So, and then thankfully, it comes down about 20, 30 minutes later when the stress level's out. And that's probably a normal response.
Right.
But if you're stressed all day long, you can eat perfect, but your blood sugar may be elevated. So there again, when it comes to a weight loss program, you need to work with people, professionals that understand all of those physiological responses that we have throughout the day so that we can address all of those. Otherwise, like you said, you don't know what you don't know.
You don't know what you don't know. And one of the things, our time is almost done here. So one of the aspects of this is that once you get your health back, boy, every other aspect of your life rock and rolls, right? Business, family relationships, and your relationship with yourself, right?
It's funny you mentioned this part, because not a lot of people would take the leap of, all right, eating better, relationships better. But just this very week, yesterday, I was on a staff call with my health coach, and she does her one-on-one calls in people on week 3 of our program. And the woman she was talking to on the call said, you know what, it's weird, but I haven't been bickering with my husband lately. And I haven't been snappy or anything like that. And people don't realize okay, the stress that we put on our body through all sorts of reasons could be something crappy that happens at work, could be lack of sleep, could be also lack of nutrition or eating foods that are no good for us. Could be that your blood sugar is going like this. I mean, people usually hear of the word hangry by now. So hungry and angry. So that's blood sugar dipping. You become hypoglycemic and your mood destabilizes. So yeah, it's funny you mention that, but absolutely, it can affect every other area of our life.
Every aspect of your life. So, and because I know that you go into businesses and you help out the employers eating better, more productive, better environment, weight loss, right? I mean, all of that is connected.
Yep. And it's just all part of that discipline of being, we focus primarily on business owners these days, and focus on them. That was me 12 years ago. And I know how much it changed the way I felt. And I couldn't do all the stuff I'm doing now. Like, a lot of people ask me, how do you do this project, that project? Because they see me doing different things in the community.
Right.
And it's like, because I feel good now. Back then, the ambition was horrible. I'm sure my testosterone levels, and that's a whole different topic. My testosterone levels were probably tanked back then because I was 40 pounds overweight and I was eating crappy. I was eating primarily carbs and sugars. I would let my stack of files on my desk would just pile up. Now I do them between every patient. And now I'm looking for other stuff to do. Now I'm looking for new projects to grow and expand my business.
You have
that before at all.
Right. You have energy. You don't have any brain fog. You don't feel that anxiety. You don't feel that depression. You feel better about yourself. You feel better about what's surrounding you. You feel better about community and so forth and so on. So I totally agree. So last question. If you could give our individuals that are listening today top 3 weight loss tips, only 3, what are they?
Top 3 tips.
Threw you a little curveball, Dr. Buddy, but you can hit it.
I didn't get that one, Vince. You're not like CNN. You feed me the questions beforehand. Let's see. I would say number 1 is get your mind right. So find that thing, like what I was explaining before, that thing that pulled me out of bed in the morning at 5:30 in the morning when I didn't think I was a morning person. So find that thing that when you have those cravings that you need to, that you can visualize what you want more than that slice of pizza at that time. So that's tip 1. Tip 2 for weight loss is don't eat after dark. Again, evolutionary mismatch. We probably weren't awake much after dark because melatonin rises up after the sun goes down. But because of lights overhead and screens like this shining in our eyes, melatonin production goes down to almost nothing, which affects our survivability and how we cope with COVID, by the way. So I would not eat after dark. Studies show that same amount of calories, if you ate half those calories after dark, you gain weight or maintain weight. You didn't lose weight like the other group that ate during daylight hours. So that's tip number 2. Tip number 3, manage that stress. I think stress affects my blood sugar more than my foods do. Because when I'm eating on point, the stress is the main driver of what my blood sugar looks like on a given day. And I see this in my patients. So I'd one, and this just came up recently as well. She just reached out to me this morning. She's going through a lot in her personal life and her blood sugars have been spiking like crazy. Her A1C is okay because it's dipping too. And it's going like this. So it's not constantly elevated. So her doctor doesn't want to do anything for her. So we're going to get her continuous blood glucose monitor to prove to her doctor that, okay, there is something going on here. But stress is her main factor because she's eating pretty good. She's eating the way she has been for months, but because of the added stress. So we need to find ways to get the stress out of our life when possible. Sometimes we're married to our stress, or not my wife, of course, but sometimes we're married or the family is stressed or work is stressed that you can't.
You're sleeping on the couch tonight, but that's okay.
Yeah, she's down the hall. She can't hear me. Or you need to manage that stress. So things like yoga, meditation, breathing exercises, you need to do something to bring that down. Biofeedback, there's a lot of different strategies out there. And it's not all about the food. It's not all about going on a diet. So as I mentioned here, I didn't say what to eat, how much of what to eat. That's important as well. But it's these other things that people often don't think about that has an even larger effect on their ultimate success when they want to lose weight.
Right. I want to thank you very much. This has been a great conversation, Dr. Buddy. How can people contact you? How can businesses contact you?
Yeah, I guess the best way to contact me is I usually say I'm the only Buddy Touchinsky in the world. My last name is spelled Touchinsky with a Y at the end. So reach out to me on social media. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. Follow me. I'll follow you back. I always like to learn from others. If you like the information I shared today, I usually share this stuff on a regular basis. And I'm redesigning my website and other stuff, and I'm not too worried about that. So yeah, just find me on social media, and hopefully I can share some good stuff with you.
Go to Instagram, go to Facebook, look at Dr. Buddy Touchinsky. We recommend him 100%. Great, knowledgeable, seasoned individual. And that's what you want. You want to go to the right person as opposed to the wrong person. So please give Dr. Buddy a call. I want to thank everybody for listening today. Please share this with family, friends, neighbors, coworkers, anybody. We love to motivate. We love to educate. We love to inspire. I'm Dr. Dan. You can find me at suburbanwellnessgroup.com, 973-483-2277, or greenleafbewell.com. Dr. Buddy, thank you very much for being here today. We'll have you back on soon.
Hey, thanks for the soapbox. I always enjoy talking about this stuff, and got to spread that news, spread the movement.
Motivate, educate, and inspire. Take care, everybody.